Hey guys, it's Kevin again, once again back with...
The Auburn Wanderer.
Yes, he's actually with me this time, and in this video, of course, we're going to be reviewing Terence Malick's highly anticipated new film, A Hidden Life. And what A Hidden Life is essentially about is we center on basically Nazi Germany towards the midpoint of the war, and we center on these two characters who are really living in this very sort of rural area and things like that, and basically they're all supposed to be conditioned to think the same way. However, our main character Franz is very much opposed to the beliefs of the Nazis and things like that, and this really starts to get him into some deep trouble and really makes him start to question if he can continue to have these beliefs and what that's really going to do for him and all that kind of stuff, and that's really all we're going to say. So right off the bat, I know you are a huge fan of Terence Malick. You've seen many of his films, and I know Tree of Life is one of your favorites and things like that, so I know you were very excited for this one.
Yes, I was. I thought that this film looked amazing. I think Terence Malick is one of the best directors of all time, and so I was obviously very excited for this film because it had also a really good word of mouth.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, you know, it's cool to see a Disney film like this, you know?
Yes,
so,
definitely.
So yeah, but you know, jokes aside, I was really excited to see this, and I haven't seen a Terence Malick film in theaters, so you know, I know this is like a new release. Like obviously, I was going to see it in theaters, but still, you know, to see like that gorgeous visual style that he has on the big screen was, you know,
it's such a distinct one too.
Yeah.
As for me, I was definitely looking forward to this film, but my history with Terence Malick is a little bit weird. He has one film that I think is an absolute masterpiece, and then the other one he's made, Knight of Cups, I think is almost kind of shit. So I really didn't know where this film was going to go. And after seeing it, we both really like this film. We think it's definitely a step in the right direction for, you know, Malick and things like that. It's not perfect for sure, but I think overall it does what it needs to do. But we're just getting into right now, starting off with the cast. And look, this is one of the most crowded years in recent memory when it comes to really great acting performances and things like that. And I said this walking out of the movie to Caden, actually. If it wasn't as crowded as a year, I would honestly put August Diehl, I think his name is, in the conversation for Best Actor, because I think he does a phenomenal job here. He perfectly represents a man that is living in this society that he just doesn't really fit into. Every single thing that people are saying, he is starting to really be upset about. He doesn't like the fact that people are chanting Heil Hitler and things like that. It's really starting to upset him, and I don't think it was necessarily like the big showier moments. It's more the quieter moments that really stuck out to me. As a very visual sort of actor in that way, and that's something you really need in a Terence Malick film, because his films are essentially visual, really rely heavily on visual storytelling, and that's something that Diehl, I thought, did a really great job with, and I thought he was far and away the best part of this film, for sure.
Yeah, I think he was great in this movie. You know, the thing that's interesting about this character is that this character goes through the fucking ringer.
Oh god, yeah.
And it's really, really devastating and like heartbreaking to see, but you know, he does such a great job at like repressing it.
Yeah.
And you know, trying to stay above because you know, because he won't, surrender to Hitler and do an oath to him because you know, he can't do that, you know, and a lot of people in this situation, you know, they say in the film, like, oh, but, you know, you're not protecting your family, you know, you're basically, you know, going to be killed by doing this. But he's a man that takes great pride.
He's a man of his morals, yeah.
Who believes in what he does. And, you know, there's a quote at the end of this film talking about how, like, the unsung heroes are the ones that are, like, the biggest heroes. And, like, I feel that because, like, because this is based on true events. Because this man literally basically, I mean, obviously, you know, like he didn't like have a one-on-one with Hitler, and you know, it was like just you know, talk like, you know, with like talking to other Nazis and stuff, but it's like it's just like going up against that type of force and such cruelty in such a fucked up world where you're being forced to serve to do an oath if you're a part of like the army. Like that's so fucked up, but it's like it was a time of fear, and the fact that he was terrified of what he was doing, but he still did it, you know, and like he conveyed that so well, and it's definitely one of the best performances that I've seen this year. So
yeah, for sure. But also, we gotta give a shout out to Valerie Pachner as well, who plays his wife. I thought she was fantastic. Similar to Diehl, this is not a very showy role. She is very much it's a very restrained role in the way, but it's one that has tons of emotion and tons of conviction and things like that. You can really tell this is a woman that, although she may not necessarily agree with her husband's beliefs, she is doing everything she can to try to protect him. She's doing everything she can to keep it together. But after a while, you know, she does start to get very worried. And especially towards the third act of this movie, I thought she had some truly phenomenal scenes. And I thought she did a really great job here for sure.
Yeah, me too. I thought that she gave like a really emotionally poignant performance, you know, because you know, she has like these scenes, everyone does, like these scenes of like outbreaks and stuff, and you know, these like scenes of like epic like tension clashes, and like and she really nails that aspect of the film and makes it like soul crushing at points, because you know, we're like the audience, you know, where it's like
very much,
we're like, we know what you know, what's happening, you know, with the main character. I believe what's his name, Franz. Yeah, Franz. The thing that's interesting about him is that what we know morally is obviously right, but the repercussions of it are such a tricky thing to, you know, handle and cope with, and she does a great job of guiding the audience through that, because her reaction are very similar to how at least I hope most audiences' reactions are to this film. Definitely. And yeah, I thought that she was great. The rest of the acting in this film was also great. I mean,
yeah, definitely.
Terence Malick does a really good job at, like, I know he's our producers, but he does a really great job at, you know, directing actors and giving them, you know, guidance on like how to, you know, approach scenes and stuff. And you know,
something that is unfortunate to mention though when it comes to the acting is that this was the final performances of both Michael Nyqvist and Bruno Ganz. They both do a really great job. They're great actors. It sucks that this was their last performance, but ended off on a high note, I think. I think they both did a really good job here. Matthias Schoenaerts is obviously great here too. He does a really great job. And yeah, pretty much echoing what you said. The acting here is definitely very strong, but it really is these two actors that really do anchor the film. Those are the two people you care about, and they do a really good job with that. Let's get into Malick's directing, because he's a very hit-or-miss director, because, you know, recently his films have been mostly tone poems, and they've lacked narrative structure and things like that. But the one thing we can definitely say is that he has his own style, he sticks with it, and I think he does a really good job with that here. He kind of feels like a combination of the old and the new Terence Malick, where it does definitely have a narrative structure, but he also is telling a visual story in that way, and I think he overall did a really good job with that. But the other thing he did a great job with, I think, is emotion-wise. You can tell, really cares about the story. He definitely did his research, and I thought his directing was really good here. I wouldn't say it's, like, amazing directing, but for a comeback film, it definitely is really well done, for sure.
His directing here is great. You know, it's interesting because this film reminded me a lot of, like, The New World.
Right.
Where, like, that was, like, an interesting film because it was, like, Malick really getting into this more intimate, you know, handheld, you know, kind of, like, swirly and, you know, like, you know, type of, like, filmmaking and cinematography, and very, you know, like, he's always had very poignant visuals, but, like, very, like, intimate, you know, and
that's a great way to sum up this film, for sure, especially the first act, I would say.
This reminded me a lot of The New World because it's very narrative driven, and it, you know, I mean, The New World's a better movie. The movie's a masterpiece, but this one's really good. But it's cool to see Malick go. Yeah, it's cool to see Malick go back to stuff. I mean, The Tree of Life is one of the best films I've ever seen. But that film, the narrative, the reason why that film is so perfect is because Terence Malick is able to take his dreamlike, intimate style and, like, you know, and something he does in this film that, you know, that relates to, like, Tree of Life in a way is, like, you know, like, how it points, like, they'll go back to flashbacks when they're having memories. That's what The Tree of Life is essentially about, and that's why that one was so good. So I like seeing him kind of go back to that a little bit here with, like, callbacks and memories and stuff. And, you know, and, like, you know, he really, you know, I will say this, though. And this is maybe more so due to the edit, but sometimes my only real issue is the pacing is definitely a bit slow at points.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
You know, and, you know, I don't mind slow pacing. I mean, I just saw fucking Satan Tango in theaters, but, like, you know, because the movies are great. But, like, the thing is, it's like how to use the slow pace, but, like, for me, I understand the second act of this film is really trying to get into the ideas of faith and God, and like guidance, getting through pain and suffering, and like keeping like your will up.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it gets a little bit repetitive.
Yeah, I was, yeah.
And I think the film could have been cut down a little bit. I don't agree with people like fucking like Sean Baker who are like the film needs a major edit. Like, no, I think if the film was like
2 hours and like 50 minutes or something.
The movie is 2 hours and 50 minutes.
Okay, then like 2 hours and like 30 minutes.
Yeah, like 2 hours 30 minutes, like 2 hours 25, like something like that would be like would be better, because it would cut down at least like like a portion or two where like to me it's just conveying the same point again. And I know the whole film is really about like thinking about like what your action and choices are going to be you know in the face of evil, but sometimes it's like, okay, we know where these characters are going. We know what arcs are going to get finished. You don't need to keep like letting us in on like how like oh, they don't believe in God anymore and God's just like a fairy tale, which I mean that's an idea that like Terence Malick has explored before, especially in The Tree of Life. But like it's like here I just got a little bit too repetitive, and the exploration of it is not nearly as interesting as he has done before. So.
Yeah, and then getting into the screenplay, the things that it does right, though, because obviously we just talked about some more negatives, I think the thing that does right is that the plot is so interesting, following this man who every interaction he has to basically, he basically has to act like he, agrees when he doesn't. But you can tell they're just things that really are starting to get to him. Something as simple as just an early example is that he comes across people and they're all saying Hail Hitler, and he won't do it. Yeah. He doesn't, it's something in him. He doesn't feel right to do it. And it kind of reminds me of the more serious version of like Jojo Rabbit earlier this year, or something like that, where obviously in that one the kid starts out loving Hitler and then eventually he goes the other way. This is basically if he was like that throughout the entire film, and I think they explored that very well here. I really loved where they end up going with that, and not just because of Diehl's performance. I think the actual exploration of this man that basically has to, it basically has to fight against a society that is always against him if he doesn't believe in the same things. It's very hard to cover, but the film does a really good job with that for sure. And just seeing him get deeper and deeper into it, and even knowing that his life is on the line if he continues to do this, you can just see how dedicated he is to this cause, how he is doing everything that he possibly can to fight for this. It kind of reminds me of Silence, where that film is about a man that is so dedicated to his religion, whereas this one, he is against the beliefs that they want him to fight for, whereas Silence, it's the other way around. And similar to how in Silence, that man fought for everything that he possibly could, even if his life, meant it, even if his life was threatened. That's the same with Franz in this movie, and I think that's definitely one of the most effective things for sure. And their relationship as well, you really do care about these two. They spend a very good amount of time showing the life that they have, showing the bond that they have and things like that. And when they're separated, it becomes really heartbreaking in that way. And I think that's definitely the best aspect of the screenplay, is the him questioning himself, but also the exploration of their separation and all that kind of stuff.
Well, like when you look at Jojo Rabbit, I mean, they're both Fox Searchlight film, but they both deal with Hitler and stuff. And the Nazis. The thing that was so good about Jojo Rabbit was that you knew what was happening was so ridiculous, but that's why it was funny. That's why I don't really think the criticism that Jojo Rabbit is insensitive are really that valid, because like
it's a satire.
Yeah, and I mean it's like it's poking light on a situation that's obviously like not that funny, but that's why it's funny. And plus Jojo Rabbit gets really serious towards
especially
the end.
In the third act,
and like it's a really, really good portrayal of someone who idolizes someone who, is kind of like their hero, and then they're like, wait a minute, and of course this happens to be fucking Hitler.
Yeah, the naivety.
And in this one, it's like you're seeing that in a much more nuanced way, in a Terence Malick type of, way, this kind of study. The one scene specifically that I thought was really interesting was the scene where the Nazis come to their farm on their village to get donations. And Franz is just like, no, and they keep like following him, and he keeps looking at them, and you can tell like the anger and the discomfort and the fear is like building building up, and like he's like trying not to, you know, like lose his fucking mind. And you know, it's just like that scene right there, you know, is really like powerful because it's like, he can't get away from it. You know, it's like, you know, he knows he's probably going to get called up, and you know he's just like waiting for it. But he, you know, is like at the same time, like if I get called up, like I got to stick to like who I am. You know, he's talking to like the priests and stuff, and he's like, you know, like I got, you know, like, you know, it's like what do I, you know, do? You know, it's like it's such like a deep dilemma and conflict. Yeah. But you know, it's like, you know, I don't know. It's a very complex film.
It is.
So, you know, Terence Malick is one of the best directors, maybe the best director to tackle all these issues because he tackles ideas of faith like better than like many directors ever have. So.
Yeah, he does a great job with that here for sure. But getting more into the negative stuff with the screenplay, there are definitely, I think, some things that are a bit underwritten. As Kaden stated before, there are points where we will cut to flashbacks, but they're very brief. Like, we'll very briefly see them. I actually think it would be more effective because the film is so heavily focused on their relationship if we actually saw the beginnings and things like that. So that way, when we'd eventually get to the end, it'd be that much more effective that way.
I don't agree. I think they focus enough time on them past the flashbacks to really develop that relationship and how much they care for each other and like the family and the kids, you know?
Yeah, definitely, but I just feel like there could have been more of a focus there. There's a subplot in this movie involving Fonny and Franz's mother that at first I really liked, but the more it went on, I thought it did still get a little bit repetitive and things like that. And maybe it's just because the Franz side of things was so interesting, and I loved everything that was going on there, what he ends up going through. I mean, it's some grueling stuff. Even though the movie's PG-13, it does not hold back in that way. It really does get into the horrors of what really went down for people that were in Franz's position, that weren't in concentration camps, but was pretty close to one, and was pretty close to, you know, the Jew, like they were as hated as the Jews and things like that, and they were respected basically just as little as they were. And this is an aspect that we haven't seen in a lot of movies before, and I really like the way it was touched upon here. So maybe just because that side of the movie was so interesting, that's why I wasn't as into that part of the movie. And I think overall they did do a good job with that. Something to note, though, is that the movie definitely does shift a bit in its second half once Franz and Fonny, they get separated. The movie's very much a narrative structure at first, and then it becomes a series of letters that they're sending back and forth to each other. And it took me a while to remember this is what Terence Malick does. Like, he's very much a visual sort of director in that way. He relies heavily on visuals, not necessarily dialogue, but visuals. And that's one of the reasons I love Days of Heaven so much, is because that film's able to communicate so much just through visual storytelling and narration. The thing is here, though, I think that it works, but it's kind of jarring at first because it's the second half of the movie, and it becomes very repetitive after that. And I think that goes back to the whole repetitive aspect that you were talking about. Overall, though, it's a good screenplay. It's definitely a good screenplay. Things are well explored, and I was overall impressed by it.
My only other issues are, like, some people might say, well, that's what makes it more sad. I thought how the movie was gonna wrap up was like so predictable.
Yeah, there's an inevitability to it.
And you know, and people will say, you know, like that's the point. Yeah, and like I get that, but
yeah,
like,
that's kind of how I feel.
But they spend the movie's almost 3 hours, and I'm not saying like, you know, it's like a long movie because it's like it's not really.
It's not.
But like it's like, I know for some that's long, but for us it's nothing really. But like. Yeah. It's just like most of the movie is them like talking about like how this is gonna end up, but it's like we know how it's gonna end up. Yeah. You know, because if it ends up going in other ways, you know, it's like the movie would kind of just be pointless. But you know, at the same time, you can use that argument that, well, that's the point, but it's like, again, it's like, it just makes some of it a little bit too uninteresting at points.
Yeah, so. I think it could have utilized its 3 hours just a little bit better overall.
Yeah.
The one thing we did definitely agree on is that the cinematography is gorgeous here. Some of the best of the entire year.
The wide shots, the close-ups,
especially in the beginning when you're seeing this very peaceful farmland that you're living on, you get this very sort of serene feeling, and they do a really good job with putting you into this comfort to where once it's disrupted, you really do feel it. You feel it when things start to crumble for these two, because they've built this great life together. They've been able to hide out, essentially, and they've been able to live in this nice farmland. And when eventually things start to go sideways, I think the cinematography plays a really big part in that for sure. And that's something with a lot of Terence Malick films, that the cinematography really is its own character in that way, and I think that's very much the case here for sure. And then James Newton Howard's score, oh my god, I mean, look, he always goes all out, but it's easily one of my favorites of the entire year. It's so emotional and really just sinks you into everything. It keeps you invested in that way. And, you know, for a movie like this that is 3 hours, which I know for you is not long because you just saw a 7-hour movie, so nothing's long compared to that. But definitely it's longer than most movies for sure. I think you need a score like that to really keep you invested, and Howard did a really great job composing this movie. It's definitely one of my favorite scores of the year for sure.
I agree.
Yeah, and yeah, so we talked about the editing, all that kind of stuff, how it can get a little bit too repetitive. I think that the first act and the third act are pretty much perfect. I really love everything going on there. The third act especially, even though I know you thought it was predictable, I thought it was very effective. I really...
Oh, no, man, it's effective. Yeah. I mean, the ending's fucking, like, emotional.
Yeah, so. I really do love the way the movie wraps up. It's very haunting, it's very sad, and it was very effective in that way, and I think they definitely did a good job. Overall, this is a really well-done film. It gets its message across quite well. It shows that Malick definitely has not lost his touch. He really does a great job at telling a much more narrative-type story here. The two performances from Diehl and the other actress, whose name I can't think of right now, they both do an incredible job really anchoring the film in that way. The way it explores themes of abandonment, themes of just questioning and things like that, I think it does an excellent job with overall. The cinematography is top-notch, as is the score. Overall, this was a really, really good film. Again, I think it could, the only thing that really holds back is that I just think it could have utilized that 3 hours just a little bit better than it was overall. So for me, I'm definitely going to give A Hidden Life overall a B.
Yes, I really like this film. I think that this is a really good film by Terence Malick. I'm excited to see his other film that he's filming right now. I wonder if that's going to come out maybe next year or 2021.
I don't know.
That should be exciting to see. And yeah, so I'm excited that, you know, Terence Malick is, you know, kind of back on some people's, you know, good side, because I know his last two films have been very divisive.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I really like this film. I think it has some of the most powerful performances of the year. A very, very good message too.
Definitely.
You know, it's a film about sacrifice and faith, and, you know, while sometimes I feel like it doesn't explore those ideas the best, this is a very memorable film.
And the things that are great are fucking great.
Yes. So yeah, I really like this film a lot. You know, it's not one of my favorites of the year. But it is definitely a film that, you know, I hope to go back to at some point, and I'm going to give A Hidden Life a 7 out of 10.
All right, guys, so that's it for our review of A Hidden Life. Once again, want to thank the Auburn Wanderer. We're not done yet. We still have 2 more reviews to do, so definitely look forward to that. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that.
Okay, bye.
Fuck off.